Yeah.
But how do we start? We have some words that we say every time.
That was at the ending.
I know I say let's get into it, but you say something. What is that?
I do not be remembering what I say.
It's a new year, new thing.
It
All
is.
right, y'all.
It is.
Welcome to the Dap Project podcast. Thank you for playing a big role in Dap as a love language.
Yes.
Let's get into it.
There we go. Oh, but you do have a first question though, Aaron.
So I'm curious. Like I didn't get into this exhibit until we met Van, and I'm curious to know what made you all say, "Oh, this sounds cool," or maybe like, "This sounds crazy." But when you heard the Dap Project wanted to interview in your neighborhoods of Parkview, Anacostia, Congress Heights, Stronghold, and Edgewood, what came to mind when you thought about the Dap Project?
Anyone can start. So just a word for the road. Everybody has a mic because we want everybody. See, look at Keyonna smiling. We want everybody to be involved and engaged. And we also want everybody to be involved and engaged. And also, if you need to adjust, you can use these little. Yeah, do you want to adjust a little bit?
I'm good.
Okay. Look, Greg's ready. Okay,
I'm vertically challenged. So I
had to bring mine down too, brother.
No. Yeah. So why did you all decide to say yes to this project?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Sorry.
No.
Let me let Sharece go first.
The Greg. Ladies
no, because I didn't know you was
my
about to,
brother. I love you,
you know,
Greg.
you were about to say something.
Because
so
your story matters. That's why.
You know. Okay, I'll go. So, honestly, I was just grateful for you reaching out. And, it made me feel I was honored to be asked to do it. With the museum having the success that we've been having over the course of the past 3 years, it's like it's rare when people call and ask, about where I'm actually from.
Yeah.
I have a partner. We're 50-50 partners, but almost everybody that works in my store and works with me is from Northwest. They from uptown. Mm-hmm. They either from Clifton or from Stronghold. There's a couple of those, neighborhoods that they're from, and I'm like the lone soldier. Mm-hmm. And so it felt good to be able to highlight Congress Heights, where I'm from. I helped build those basketball courts back there.
Period.
Ask anybody in the town about that rec. That's what we do, on the basketball court. But I was really honored, and just it felt good for someone to ask about where I'm actually from and what it means to be from right there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and contrary to your fiance's statement earlier, did I make the wrong correct name? Okay,
correct or wrong?
This is it 𝗍𝘗𝗏?
Wow, y'all, I got married.
Okay, that's just her boo thing.
We didn't get
That's
married.
bae. That's bae. Just say bae.
Okay, I have to find the correct terms. Terms
Bae.
matter. Bae said you went out to meet men. She actually came out to meet men and women. Okay, bae. So
Thank
add
you.
that to your.
Sharice, tell the truth. Tell the truth.
But Rhonda was in Congress Park. I'm gonna say that again. Rhonda pulled up on me in Congress Park.
That sounds right.
And I look, I'm hosting and organizing, and I'm moving people around, and I'm in my element. And here's Rhonda. Hey, I came to meet you to talk about DAP as a love language. And I think I floored myself. I was floored because not a lot of people come to, forget about knowing where you're from. There are not a lot of people that come to my community at all, let alone wanting to tell our stories. And so the fact that she was there, engaged in the community, engaged with youth and families. I mean, you saw we had babies there from 0 to elders as old as, I don't know, 70, 75, 80. And our demographics are very diverse. And so the fact that she was there, the fact that she cared enough to show up and then to set a date to show up again, it was just no way that we were not participating in this project. And, to take it a step further, when I left Congress Park to go to college, I left and said to myself, I'm going to get my degree in communications and media because our stories need to be told. Because there was no one, someone said to me, there's no one coming to save you. There was no one coming to save us, Rhonda. There was no one coming to tell our stories. There was no one who cared if people lived or if they died. And I said to myself, I'm going to tell our stories because nobody else is going to do it. And since then, folks have called me the Oprah of the DMV, which I'm just walking into. I'm just sort of kind of accepting, but I'm excited to tell our stories. Excited to see ourselves on the big screen. I have some producers in the audience. Hopefully, I shared with you all earlier, hopefully we can take this to the big screen. Hopefully we can take this project to where it's supposed to be to every level because our stories matter. So thank you, Rhonda.
Amen.
Thank you, Dap Project.
Thank
this
you.
is really a love language.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next question, Keyonna, did you want to comment on the first?
Oh, well, I was just going to say, and it's very short. Anytime I have a space to talk about Southside, I'm going to do it. Because I'm born and raised here. Like Lil Greg, I was uptown for high school, middle school, elementary school. I went to Georgetown Montessori because my mother just knew that I needed to, just looking for better, right? But I've always had to come home and always seen the difference and always realize how people forget about us or they're scared of us just because they don't know us. So anytime I got space to talk about Southside, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Period.
We outside.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Why do you think it's important for us to uplift the very subtle ways that Black folks communicate? And it was you, Keyonna, in conversation who said we're different.
Yeah.
We walk different, we present different, we're different. And each of you choose to showcase an element of the culture in a particular way, whether it's through fashion, through activism, or through art, supporting the art. So let's just really examine, kind of talk about why is that important to talk about? Oh, yeah.
Sorry, that's me and my daughter. It's so cute.
I told you we had some hidden gems. We had some hidden gems.
She got the memo, pink and black.
That's
Dap is for the
right.
culture.
That's right, yeah.
And the kids.
Yeah, why is it important for us to talk about the specific ways and the cultural norms that make us who we are?
Silas, we're looking at you now.
Okay. I'll give you one quick example. When I got married, the day of my wedding, my dad came to me as I was loading up the car before the wedding. And my dad never really cried a lot, right? I've seen him cry maybe 3 times tops, right? And he just shook my hand. Like, he gave me a dap. And as he didn't say anything. He never gave me any marital advice despite being married for like 60 years, right? But he shook my hand, and I knew exactly what he was trying to say despite the fact that he couldn't express it verbally, right? And I think that what happens sometimes, the discussions that we have online, the discussions that we have on podcasts about Black men and expressing themselves, and we often try to force them to do it the way we want them to.
Yeah.
Right? And DAP is a way in which we can communicate without even speaking verbally. So that one example of that interaction with my dad and I is something that I always remember because I know exactly what he was trying to say despite the fact that he couldn't say it, and he said it through a DAP.
Yeah.
Yeah, Silas made me think about something. I think that's just about Black folks, right, and where we come from and our history. We don't have the luxury to do a lot of things that other folks can, right? So even like thinking about back in the day, slavery and civil rights movement, we didn't have the freedom to really be vocal and say what we really felt, right? And so I think it's important because I can literally make this face. And what that mean?
We know what it means.
BS, like, girl, please. You know what I'm saying? But I think it's so many things as Black people that are so special to us, or how we prepare food, how we communicate, just our resilience. And I think it's important to highlight that just because what you started with, we're different.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to highlight that difference, but also highlight it in a space of being like uniqueness, right? Like we're very special. It's a little bit more than different. We're special. And so to highlight that, I think is very important. And it gives us a reminder of who we are and what we're capable of. So I think it's very important and grateful that y'all did it.
Yeah, I think just like music, I always say that music is a universal language. Like you don't have to know someone to relate with somebody on music. I feel the same way about DAP in the Black community. It's just an instant bond with people. You don't even have to know their names, and you can have a full-blown conversation with a person. And it's just you give somebody DAP, and you just instantly feel connected, especially if you give them the one-arm hug. If you give them the one-arm hug, you come to my wedding.
There you go.
Straight up. You know, like, I give a quick example. I went to a Wizards game a couple of months ago, and we won by 2. It was like a real close game. And then 𝘗𝗲𝗄𝗍𝗵 hit a shot. And then like it was a dude sitting in front of me. We cheering. He turns around, look at me, and he cocks his arm back like this far back, and we give each other dap. And I'm like, "You my man's." Like,
Immediately,
yeah, exactly.
He's your
Like,
man.
And I think that's something that needs to get talked about more, because especially with like black men, is just the stigma about us. You know, it's been an ongoing stigma about us. You know, being hyper aggressive, not having you know, not being able to show emotions, but we are showing emotions when we give each other dap.
Yeah, connectivity.
You know, and exactly, connectivity, and it's showing that we love one another and we here for one another. So it's just something that even when I went to school and I was meeting people all over the country, it's just, that was universal. I didn't know anything about where you were from. I couldn't understand your slang, your language, but when I gave you dap, I felt like we could be friends, and I'm still friends with him to this day.
Wow.
Silas, that came up in our conversation in Edgewood. We talked about how DAP was a way for you to connect with other folks in college there, and also how you saw different types of DAP from different regions. We had a conversation about Philly. Do we have Philly in the house today?
No Philly.
No? Okay.
Oh, it's a little snap with 2 back there.
Maybe a little bit of Philly. Remember that part of our conversation?
Yeah, so we talked about that a little bit. So Philadelphia in particular, when I was in college, the guys from Philly were very stiff on purpose, right? They walked a little stiffer. Their clothes were like really creased. They buttoned their shirts to the top, and they shook your hand, right? And so it got to the point where after like the first couple of weeks freshman year, we started meeting them, and it was so weird that I started just shaking their hand back because I knew what was going to happen when we approached each other. And DC and Philly, their styles were somewhat similar, so there were times where we would be standing together and you couldn't really tell who was from DC and who was from Philly, but the handshake was the one thing that stood out when people walked down that main street on campus. The Philly guys would always extend their hand that way. So that was a unique thing that I saw from that city that I hadn't seen anywhere else.
Do you feel you trace that back to anything in particular, why they did a regular handshake versus?
So I think a part of it is in Philadelphia, the Nation of Islam is really strong. So even folks that are like, you know, non-religious, or folks that might be, you know, not necessarily Orthodox Muslims, they took on the culture of like the more sort of disciplined, straight up and down sort of approach in terms of talking to people. So, NOI had a real heavy influence in Philadelphia at that time.
The photos, did you want to get in, Greg?
Yeah, I think no, because I understand that it's called the gentleman's handshake.
Yeah.
That's what they do in
Right.
Philly.
Yeah.
I had a friend named 𝘊𝘶𝗵𝗄𝗏 from Philly, and he introduced me to that gentleman's handshake. And to me, it was a sign of respect.
Yeah.
You know, when you're in college, like Silas said, you know, you learn a lot about people and where they're from based on their DAP. You know, you learn a lot about people's securities and insecurities as well. You know when people need space, you know, they don't like to really embrace when they DAP. They'll give you this and extend their arm out.
Yeah.
You know, so I think, you know, the DAP is a special type of communication, because nonverbal communication is still the #1 form of communication.
Yeah.
And like Keyonna said, just a certain look can either turn you on or off about a person. And so you learn how to deal with people based upon how you're greeted, oftentimes.
You know, there's a space on your website that talks about that, like whether or not you're going to embrace someone. When I said that, that DAP saved my life. You know, I intentionally now am embracing my femininity and my womanhood, because growing up in that space, it wasn't socially accepted. Or you were subject to catcalling, you were subject to rape culture. And so for me, DAP literally was a survival. It was life-saving. It was me connecting with the men who were dominant in those communities and really learning from them. And so I would wear baggier clothes. I would wear, I wouldn't wear makeup. I mean, I was a kid at the same time, but I was surviving. And that's a song that just Paul, you're going to hear from him later, but he wrote a song about survival. Just as I was, you know, he'd already written this song, but I was just sharing to him my truth about growing up in Congress Park that I hadn't shared before. And so I said, you know, this is a space where people are surviving. And a lot of times as a woman and an adult, I still felt like I was in survival. I still felt like I needed a way to connect with people that was a new love language. And so for me, I'm excited to learn all of your love languages out there while I'm redefining my own love languages and redefining how I need to be loved. And Philly is a place that does that. And I think all of us individually can decide and define and recreate and redefine what does love language look like for you. You know, everyone's like, hey, can I get? Do you have? But what about, here's my love language. Here's how you're going to address me in 2023. Here's how you're going to love me in 2023 and beyond, because this is the new version of me. And so that's what this love language conversation really brings to the forefront. And so we're really grateful for that.
Our photos evoked a lot of emotion, the photos that you were in. I can name a photo for each of you that someone pulled me aside and said, wow, look at this exchange, whether you're looking at a family member or someone is hugging you, or if you're standing in front of an iconic image, which is right behind us also. Yeah, like that. So I'm curious, and I think the audience is also curious about how you experienced the other photos of other people.
Yeah.
So if there was a photo of someone else that you saw that changed your thinking in some way, caused you to pause, or just evoked a real emotion, we would love to know how you experienced the photos of other people.
I loved, personally, Lil Greg's photos. Clearly because it was like right around the corner from where we are. In transparency, though, I will say that I've done most of my work and my professional time in Ward 8, but I live in Ward 7. I'm still east of the river, so don't play me. But I don't live in Congress Heights, but I spent so much time there. My father used to live there. My siblings grew up there. But I was raised in Hillcrest. But I think, honestly, this may have been the first time where I realized Lil Greg was from Southside, because he spent so much time, you know, with the museum and being uptown, and, you know, it just be busy work. You never really talk about where people from, but now, you know, Southside, we getting popping now, so everybody want to pull up and tell people where they from. Because at first for me, and this is serious though, because when I was, like I said, I spent a lot of my school time uptown. So when it was time to have, I could go to sleepovers, but when it was time to have a sleepover at my house and they realized where I was from, it just wasn't happening. So I remember it really not being cute to say that you were from Southeast. Like, you would get blackballed, or people would automatically like put you in a box. And so it was just,
still do.
Yeah, still do, but not as much, because like I said, we popping now. It's coming over here. We the last spot to, you know, really build up. And so me and Lil Greg, we've been spending a lot of time together because of some of our other professional ventures that have been putting us in the same space. But I was really excited, because for me it was to see somebody that I already know that the city has respect for, that the city admires, that the city that he inspires a lot of people in the city, and to say, oh yeah, that's the Southside creative, right? Mm-hmm. That's something that we do at Congress Heights Arts and Culture Center. We're the home of the Southside creative. So the more that they pop out, I love to say that, oh, that's one of ours. Okay? Yeah.
Clap it
like
up.
DJ Heat. Who knew that DJ Heat was from Southside? I didn't. Until she did on the interview the other day. So yeah, Southside is popping. We have great creatives, but yeah, definitely it was fun to see Lil Greg around Southside.
I heard that the Southside had the most lit art all night.
Yeah,
somebody
every year.
Every year.
We're consistent.
Every year. I think I told you that. I'm a little biased, but it's facts. Go to Shaw for a couple of hours and then come see us for a couple of hours. And
Congress Heights is the best one.
Yeah. Sorry, Mayor.
Yeah.
She was there.
Yeah. Other photos. Go ahead, Silas.
Yeah, I went. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, thanks, man. For me, it was Sharece taking a picture outside of the Congress Park Plaza sign, because that's where I'm from, and I never I don't live there anymore. My grandmother, when she had her last stroke, we moved her out. It was like in 2013, and it's a picture of me and my uncle, at her old apartment complex. And what triggered me when I saw Sharece outside that, it brought back so many memories. Because if you from Congress Park, if you lived in there from the, I want to say late 80s up until 2012, everybody knew my grandmother, Mary Davis. Everybody knew Miss Mary.
Rest in peace.
She was like Big Meech without the drugs.
Come on. Come on, Big Mary.
Like everybody knew her. She had five children. They were always like ripping and running the street. Everybody knew my uncles, my aunts, and I was bad. Like growing up, I was terrible, and like I used to always get in trouble. And it's just to see that sign, I think about like what Malcolm X used to be, like the old Malcolm X.
Right.
That's where I went to school.
Your
at.
evolution.
That's why I went to school.
Yeah, like so it was just seeing that just brought back so many memories, and I was like really proud because I think Sharece had touched on this earlier. Like people don't come to our community, people don't really talk about it. Like when I tell people where I'm from, and I say Southeast, they kind of give me the side eye, like, oh man, you must be cruddy, you must be a snake. And it's like, no, I'm actually college educated. And they're just like, oh, really? What community college did you go to?
Wow.
And I'm like, no, I actually went to one of the best liberal arts schools in the nation.
You did.
Like, and I always tell people, like, even when I went up to college, like, no, I'm from D.C. What part? And, you know, because there used to be people that say, I'm from D.C. And be like, what part? Oh, I live in Silver Spring.
Arlington.
And I'm actually in Chevy Chase.
Chevy Chase.
Yeah, and I'm like,
Gaithersburg.
so when I went to the school and somebody asked me and I said D.C., I was like, no, I'm from Southeast. Like, I'm from College Park.
DC for real.
Exactly. And like people that's from DC, like when you say I'm from DC and they say where, don't just give them the quadrant. They want to know the hood.
Right.
They want to know like exactly where he's from.
What high school did you go to?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just
They called me DC in college. I didn't even have a name.
yeah.
DC.
So it's like that photo in particular just brought back so many memories because I always rep where I'm from with pride,
Period.
even
Yeah.
to this day. And just to see that it was someone else that had that same like mentality and that same love for their community, I was like, I got to be a part of this.
Bless. Aw.
So real quick side note, I'm the only Northeast guy here.
Oh, no.
I
said they put you in the middle
South
for
End
that
strong.
reason.
The pictures that stood out for me are the ones with John in the barbershop. I used to go in that barbershop when I was like 12, 13 years old, and one of, I guess, my first mentors was my barber. We grew up in the same neighborhood. He was older than I was, and you know, he was one of the guys that when we talked on the interview about the first guys that you got approval from when you dapped them up. And so seeing those pictures reminded me, because the inside looks the same as it did like in 1994, 93. But that whole corridor, Parkview, is starting to change, and the memories are there, but the physical structures are different now to some degree. But John's a great guy, and the folks that were in there when I was going there were great people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. You know, I'm a little biased.
Say it's me.
I called Rhonda and I said, Rhonda, you've captured parts of our city that we never get to have conversations. I said, there are so many stories in every one of these photos that I want to know everyone's story. I mean, I am almost now a story junkie. You know, tell me more about you. And I almost felt a sort of shame when there were folks who were in my community, in my space. There was a Greg, there was Keyonna, who we crossed spaces and other spaces. And I said, well, we don't even know each other. We don't know each other outside of the intentional bias that's put out there about us, whatever other people's stories are about the other people. I saw Silas, Edgewood, and Stronghold. I know that our new councilmember McDuffie at large now. And I said, wow, what if we actually had conversations? What if we actually got to know each other, regardless from South Side to Uptown, from Southeast to Northeast, from Northwest to Southwest? You know, some folks that couldn't be here tonight was this young man in my photo with Antoine. You know, he came out to support us. He had a box on his leg. You guys know what that box means, right?
Girl, yeah, we in Southside.
Yeah, I'm just checking with the audience. I'm doing a temperature check.
Y'all know what the box is.
I don't know who's out here. But Antoine said, I'm ready to change my life. And he started working with just Paul, mentoring him, and Paul was mentoring him and showing him about our event management and showing him about our programs. And there was another young man who couldn't be here, and he actually lived in the house that I grew up in. And 2 days ago, we buried him. That was the environment that, for me, was survival. That front porch, was violence for me. That front porch for me wasn't, the child. So I told someone passed my own home. They said, so many lovely childhood memories. And I didn't have that story to tell. I saw violence. I saw the war on drugs. I survived it from the front porch, Rhonda. We survived rape culture, severe HIV/AIDS pandemic on my front porch. And I told myself that the moment I get a chance to tell our survival story, that I was going to use every opportunity to do it, because we didn't have voices. And that brings me to the Washington Informer photo that you had in Congress Heights, because the Washington Informer had a spelling bee. And I was a kid, and I got to be in the spelling bee, and I got to show another side of a community that had already been painted as or written off. And I got to say, no, we're educated. No, we have dreams. We have vision. We want bigger things. But I was already in the box. So I had to work 10 times harder. And so this experience, connecting with you all, you said favorite photo. You all are all my favorite photos.
Bless. Thanks, girl.
Y'all are my favorite photo. Because I'm committed to shattering the implicit bias, shattering all of the negative stereotypes that people portray and put on us unfairly.
I want to ask our guests.
We get to change the narrative.
I want to ask our guests. It's unfortunate that tonight we're on a time schedule and we're going to be here till a certain amount of time. But everyone on this stage right now, would the five of you join us for a future conversation on the Dap Project to keep this conversation going?
Duh.
For sure.
All right.
Love you, Keyonna.
Absolutely. I'm in.
I put my demo voice on to make sure they would say yes.
I love it.
But we do have a presentation. I know Greg has to get to a Wizards game because he's being honored at the Wizards game.
For real? Give me $10, little Greg. Give me $10.
Hollywood.
Give me $10.
That is fantastic.
I got five on it.
We want to give a special presentation to Humanities DC. We would not be in this space right now talking about Dap as a love language if it were not for a grant that the Dap Project received from Humanities DC. And after we did our reception and opening and got the exhibit up, the folks at Humanities DC said, we want to buy one of the pictures.
Period.
And
Was
of
it
course, you all can guess which picture it is. It's the Love DC Go-Go photo in the back there.
It had to be Lil Greg.
It's not because of me. It's not because of me.
And also, can I give a shout out? Because the artwork. We all about art. That is the artist of that is 𝘊𝘰𝘯𝘵. He's an incredible muralist. He paints. He does portraits, and he's also a tattoo artist. Tell him I sent you.
𝘊𝘰𝘯𝘵.
Fantastic.
𝘊𝘰𝘯𝘵. So is our Humanities DC representative besides
Shout out to the funders. Give them a round of applause again.
Help us tell our stories.
Give us a coin.
I accept.
They might be outside.
It's Rebecca.
Can I say something real quick? Because I didn't get to
They selling
talk
your
about my
photos,
photo.
so you might as well.
No, we didn't talk about.
Is it me?
Talk about the other photos. But I like your stance. I liked all of the photos, honestly. I liked yours the most.
Thank you.
And I it was one photo that I liked in particular, and it didn't have any of us in it, but it was the MLK Deli.
Period. Shout out to Ty.
Yeah, because
that's the food y'all eating tonight.
Man, y'all gotta understand, like these stories that they're telling. I've seen my man survive a lot, and I've seen him change his life. And it's a beautiful thing to see somebody come from being really knee deep in the streets and possibly breaking down the community, but always having the biggest heart, the heart of gold to help everybody.
Yes.
Into transition into doing a lot of good. and becoming wealthy and changing the trajectory of his family and his whole neighborhood and my neighborhood, because he from Northeast for real.
Period.
You know, and so
Shout out
we
to
welcome him
Deanwood
with
Deli too.
open arms, you know, over on MLK. And just to answer some of the whys and, you know, about, you know, Greg, you know, you guys not knowing me until later, you know, I really carried the torch for that neighborhood for a very, very long time. And, you know, I'll be honest with you, like at a certain point, it's like, okay, how can I, Jay-Z said a lyric before and he said, how can I help the poor from one of them? So I got rich and gave back to me. That's the win-win.
Come on.
And so what I took from that, if I'm interpret that on my own, is that I had to leave.
Yeah.
You know, I had to go get some understanding because for a long time living there, you know, I normalized everything that was going on. The traumas that we was going through, I thought it was normal. Thought it was normal to see people with fat arms and fat hands with holes in it. I thought it was normal to see people pumping gas to get money. You know what I mean? Like eating Chinese food every day. Like, you know, I thought that was normal until I got away and I started getting exposed to other things. And so I think God, you know, put me on high and allowed me to tour the world with recording artists and move to New York City. I lived in LA, I lived in Miami, Atlanta, you know, just to bring back, you know, I'm a very selfless person. And, you know, I knew, you know, once I seen or got exposed to some other things, I'll be able to bring those things back to my neighborhood. And that's what Keyonna and I doing right now.
We grateful you back, boy. Let's get it.
Sign me up.
Hey, the Southside strong right
It's
now.
going
So I just want
crazy.
to put a shameless plug in there.
Go ahead.
You know, Sycamore and Oak.
Sycamore and Oak.
You know, Congress Heights, St. Elizabeth, you know, MLK, Alabama Avenue.
Don't
like
tell
just
'em.
that whole side right there. In that campus, we would no longer be a food desert
Yeah.
Come
or a
on.
retail desert.
Come on.
And we got Keyonna activating art, community events, everything. So we doing it real big over there. You know
Nah,
what
for
I mean?
real.
We
It's
got
about
a
to
voice.
get real lit. We working real hard.
Aight.
We doing a lot of training, but right there, you know, with the Mystics, they have the entertainment sports arena. It's a whole world. You could go check it out right now if you don't believe me. It's up there right now. It's in the
South
building.
side.
We like 90% finished, and we got some things for y'all. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
Southside, yeah.
Can't wait.
And that goes for all y'all that used to talk trash. Whoever's listening on this podcast, all y'all that talk trash about Southside, we outside. We are here. We have
We
arrived.
outside.
Period.
We're going to
Thank
thank
you.
LeGreg Harrison. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we'll be checking you. Make sure you check out LeGreg at the museum, at the Commanders, the Wizards, lots of good stuff.
Give me $10, Greg.
Say that again. Oh, we're going to call an audible. Is Just Paul in the room?
Whoop, 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 whoop,
Just
whoop.
Paul.
Just Paul, come on down.
Just Paul, come on up.
Come on, Just Paul.
Okay, Aaron, how much more time then do we have for questions? What, 2 more questions, 3 more questions?
Let's do it.
How much more time do we have, folks? Good people in the
2
room?
more questions.
We have time for 2 more
I
questions?
spilled that man chicken bones.
Uh-oh.
It's some more MLK
And his
outside.
cookie.
He was finished with it.
Real quick.
We have in the audience, Rhonda. You guys don't know Turk Stevens is leaving us, but I really want to acknowledge you today. Film producer extraordinaire, just did the Best Man holiday redid, and I invited him out, y'all.
Yes.
If you wave while you're walking out the door.
Appreciate you,
The
brother.
point was really a great segue into something else that we want to explore a little bit, this idea of preserving the culture. So we have culture makers here on this panel. We have folks who are activating and promoting culture. So I have a question I'm going to go to my brother Jimmy here with this question. In your role as a coordinator with Humanities DC, you are in a seat to shape, uplift, finance, as in this here gathering, events and cultural activities. How do you take your experience growing up in Congress Heights and allow that to influence the decisions that you make at Humanities DC?
I like that question. For me, it's just establishing that, like my manager said, like DC has an identity, and just presenting that identity to the table. Like, I feel like I have a seat at the table now. Like, I'm talking to people that we don't review the grants, but we can say, hey, we got this program idea. You know, what do you think? as you run programs. And it's like, I feel like we should do something that really represents the culture and just all facets of it. And I really advocate for it. You know, one of the things that, Rhonda, when I met you, I didn't even know you were doing a Dap Project. I was just talking to you, like, yo, it's this project about the Dap Project that's fire.
It was wild. It was so wild how that happened.
Yeah, I was like, it's fire. I don't know who's doing it, but this sounds black as hell. I want to be a part of this.
The light-skinned chick.
And she was like, that's me.
Look like Michael Jackson.
And like, one of the things that we're doing this year is this new program called the Culture Series, which is an extension of our panel discussions. And it used to be like grant-based where you have to apply for it. And now we're removing that, and we're just looking for people in the community that, you know, that's doing great work.
Sign me up.
Yeah, and we want to co-create events around that. We had an event about go-go music affecting the brain, like what music does to the brain, and we had Black Alley perform. They opened, and Dr. Natalie Hopkinson, she was on the panel, and she talked to me, and she said, go-go music is the official music of Washington, D.C. We need to have go-go artists performing at your events. It just makes sense.
Wow.
Yeah, and I went to my job and said, we have to do this. Even if it's not every event, the events that it makes sense, we have to do that and represent, because I do feel like it's good for the brand.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just me standing up, you know, and just advocating for it, I feel like will help. And just providing opportunities for people and connecting with people that's doing great work and seeing if there's some synergy there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
We
thank you.
absolutely do. Keyonna, in our conversation, you said that now is the time that the community really needs to come together to give each other dap. And you meant literally, but you also meant more than that. So can you tell us a little bit more about what you meant?
I kind of spoke about it earlier. Well, I just said the one thing is like we're the last spot left in DC. And when I think about that, I think about development and just like what's coming. And so knowing that we need to be on the forefront of what that looks like so that we can all be on the same page asking for the things that we want, that we don't want. Because a lot of times that people will come in your communities and they're not even asking, they're just assuming what would be nice for you and what would work. So I always say if you want to go, you know, it's an African proverb, but if you want to go far, you go together, and if you want to go fast, you go alone. So I think it's really important that there's this collaboration over competition so that we can be all on the same page and get the things that we're looking for, because it's just strength in numbers, right? And so, like I said, at this point we need to, like, because there's also like this fog in between Congress Heights and Anacostia, like we don't share the whole strip, you know what I'm saying? Right. It's a weird thing, but I'm like, we all are east of the river. Like, there doesn't not have to be the separation. I get it. You want to preserve your history and the historic parts of Anacostia and the bid, and Congress Heights wants to do the same thing. But at some point, like, we're going to have to erase all of that separation and figure out how to come together and just represent east of the river as a whole. So I was also very grateful just to be a part of this and be in the Anacostia space, because there's always like this separation between what Congress Heights looks like against Anacostia and the push. And I mean, like, literally somebody sent a message today to somebody else and was like, yeah, Keyonna runs Congress Heights Arts and Culture Center in Anacostia. I was like, girl, my location is in my name. Like, what is going on? But it was, you know, but I do like the vision of getting together and making things happen just for Southside, right? Yeah. So it's very important that we get it together, y'all.
That make me think about Anna and Baloo a little bit.
Right.
How we got Anna and Baloo. Why is that a rival when we
They're Knights too.
Yeah. So.
You said Knights.
Baloo or Knights?
Right. Anacostia Indians. Are we doing it?
Got one final question for the podcast for Silas. So Silas, you worked a lot with you work with DC readers around literacy, as well as, you know, from that to the work you've done with the recent council member at large race, in which Kenyan McDuffie from Stronghold won.
Come on.
Yep, that's right.
With all of that work that you do in the city and being a native Washingtonian, what would you say the charge is to Washingtonians sitting in this room and listening to the podcast, as well as the leaders of the district? What should the charge be?
Yeah, I think the charge for the lay people in their respective communities is to start at home. Some folks may have migrated out of town altogether. Some folks may live across town from where they grew up. But I think this project is a reminder of where we come from And, as the weather breaks and we get an opportunity to go back to our old neighborhoods, I think it's important to really have some more in-depth conversations with our former neighbors to figure out what they might need, right? Because everyone wants to help, we want to pitch in, but we're really afraid sometimes to have these real conversations. And so I do a lot of mentoring, a lot of tutoring and things like that, and people always ask me, how do you get involved? And I say, listen, start from home base. So go back to your home base. In terms of leadership in the city, I think we've got to really force our leaders to come into the communities more often. I had a conversation the other day with a friend of mine, and he said to me, the folks that are elected in D.C. at this point, like, where do they shop? Like, to get clothes or to get food, or, why don't they casually come through an event like this, right? And there was a time where you would see a Harry Thomas Sr. or a Jim Graham or
a Marion Barry.
A Marion Barry, or I mean, that's obvious, right?
Yeah.
But like even the other members of the council, you would see them, right? And I think now, honestly, there may be 2 to 3 elected officials that you may see tops. One of them is Kenyan, one of it is Trayon, and beyond that, it's kind of like etchy around where you see them at. So I think we've got to really start not just talking to officials about what their stances are, but get to know them and force them out of that comfort zone of just going to a meeting and going right home, right? Let's have some more intimate conversations so that we can begin to kind of hold them more accountable.
Great answers.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, they shop in Virginia.
Shopping in Virginia. Well, we certainly appreciate each and every one of you for joining us on the Dap Project podcast.
We appreciate y'all. Y'all did a great job, by the way.
This was powerful.
Congratulations.
Yes.
I remember first talking to Rhonda and her just, giving me the idea about what they were doing. And y'all did the damn thing. Sorry if you got to beep that.
No,
but y'all did
in.
great. You should be very proud of yourselves. It's been a vibe the entire time, and I'm just grateful to be a part. Definitely made history with this. And this is key.
I have to give a special thank you for somebody just joined the panel, just Paul, that is going to perform later. But he showed up in Congress Park from Anacostia, from Berry Farms. And I'm going to tell y'all, that's not something a lot of people are willing to do.
Nah, they ain't.
And a lot of kids from our communities don't go to certain neighborhoods across the street because they don't feel like it's safe.
Right.
So I really want to take a minute. I'm grateful that Rhonda decided to invite him up, to invite just Paul, just to share a few words and just appreciate you for what you did in Congress Heights. Thank you, bro.
Thank you. Guess what? Dap is a love language. And as long as we giving each other dap, I go in anybody's hood. And as long as there's a mission to accomplish around positivity and making things better in these communities, I will go in anybody's hood. So, man, let me know what I could do to help in your neighborhood, whether we in Northeast, Southwest, Uptown, it don't matter. Like, take me to any part, and I'm going to dig knee deep into the culture and the issues of your neighborhood, and I'm going to do my best to make it better.
That man said he good in any hood.
Good in any hood.
MLK Boulevard. I mean, this is so powerful. Coming from Anacostia, I was an Anacostia Indian and a Baloo Knight. So shout out to Baloo Knights out here. I know the value of what Keyonna is saying of us working together, and Silas bringing it back to home base. Just means a lot to me because our families are under attack, and this is something that we can reinstill love into our communities and families.
Thank you so much, Russ. What are we doing next?
Give it up to everybody see on this panel. Thank you to Rhonda Henderson, who I love, and Aaron Stallworth, her co-creator, for creating this wonderful exhibit and event tonight, the Dap Project. Dap is a love language. Thank you for our honored guests and panelists. We love y'all. We respect y'all. We support y'all. We're here for y'all. All the art that you see featuring these lovely community advocates and supporters is for sale, and all this event is made possible by a grant by Humanities DC. Give it up for the Dap Project.